Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our December 7th regular council meeting. As we do at the start of each meeting, we have a short moment of private contemplation. So please join me. Thank you, everyone. So we did have a closed session. We had a joint closed session with Innisfil Council. And as far as motions, there was no motions arising out of the closed session. So we'll move on to item 5 of our agenda, adoption of agenda. So the recommendation is that the regular council agenda dated December the 7th, 2021 be adopted as printed. A mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Contois, Councillor Dykey. Any additions or changes? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? And it is carried. At this time, council, you may declare any pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 8, deputations. So first up, 8.1 is the Police Service Board 2022 budget presentation. So we're joined by Chief Andrew Fletcher and Chair of the Board, Chris Garapi. So welcome to you both, and we're glad you're here to share the 2022 Police Service Board budget. And Chair Garapi, do you want to start off, and then we'll hand it off over to Chief Fletcher.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. It's certainly my honor to address all of you tonight. Each of you are aware, and I hope you would agree, that the South Simcoe Police Service has provided quality policing to our communities of Innisfil and Bradford, West Gwillimbury for over 20 years. Our communities are experiencing unprecedented growth, and we also know that our municipalities are expected to continue to grow significantly in the years ahead. We are at an evolutionary and critical point for the service. In order for the police service to continue to provide the high level of service to the communities that we've become accustomed to, the South Simcoe Police Service must also grow, particularly more boots on the ground. The model of policing in South Simcoe encompasses taking proactive measures and engaging with our communities to prevent crime and victimization. As we become busier, the opportunities for this level of proactive engagement is reduced. Then we find ourselves returning to a reactive model of policing, which has been shown to be less effective than a proactive model. For our community's sake, the reactive model is not acceptable. We know the types of calls and crimes being reported are increasing in severity and complexity, particularly straining our frontline staff, but also those in the support roles, such as criminal investigations and our crises outreach and support team, commonly referred to as COAST. The COAST unit continues to see increases in mental health calls year over year. Our staff levels are becoming strained as our call volumes increases due to the near explosive population growth. And we can expect our crime severity index will also continue to rise if we do not address the growth-related needs. The board is responsible under the Police Service Act to ensure effective and efficient police services are deployed in our communities. Shortly, you will hear Chief Fletcher outline what the board feels is necessary for the upcoming year. We believe this funding request meets both those mandates and believe this proposal will allow us to continue to be a leader in community safety and well-being. The budget will help prepare our communities for what the future holds. I'll turn it over to Chief Fletcher.
Thank you, Chair, and Mayor Keffer, Deputy Mayor Leduc, members of council. Next slide, please, Rebecca, if you wouldn't mind. Obviously, our budget process starts in the summer of this past year, and a couple of things that our staff have to undertake is to look at a number of budget considerations. And similar to last year, obviously, as the chair has talked about, as our population growth and our community changes, the demographics in our community as we see new influx of new immigrants into our community, as well as the aging population, is obviously an increase on our demands, which is the next bullet as you talk about the demand on our service, not just as the chair has talked about our increased call for service, but the complexities of those cases. Obviously, the focus for this year has been our need to increase staffing. And when we start our budget process, we started a zero-based budget approach. So we know that as we start to add people, we're going to have to find cuts and find reductions in other areas, and staff have been very diligent through those budget planning processes to address those. And then the last big impact for us this year was our radio infrastructure and our technology needs. We know that technology is changing. We're moving into a world of body-worn cameras, digital evidence management, CCTV cameras, and then our radio infrastructure is so key to the front line of our officers, the safety of the radios that are on their belts. And as we grow our communities and the density and all the complexities of the technology world that comes up with that, obviously we need to enhance our radio infrastructure for the safety of our members. Next slide, please. It'll be, the chair has mentioned this in his opening remarks, and it's no surprise to the members of this council. Obviously, our communities are growing, and when you look at the growth in Innisfil and the growth in Bradford, these are 2021 numbers, so we don't know what our projections yet are for 2022. We're looking at some census data that's going to come out this next year, and obviously the impact on that growth. But we're talking 82,000, roughly 82,500 people between the two communities in 2021 and beyond. And we know that growth is only going to continue. We've got areas like Innisfil, such as the Orbit, Friday Harbor, and then Bond Head, obviously the growth out in the communities, and then our business development communities here in Bradford. But as with that growth, obviously I've touched on a little bit, is the diversity of that growth and the impact on our members and the ability to address the needs of the community. Next slide, please. And with that, obviously the chair has talked about our reactionary response in the community and our demands for calls for service. If you look at the numbers, and I'd love to be able to explain 2019, but I'm not so sure I can as to what the spike was. But if you look at that continual trend from 2018, 2020, and even through 2021, and those are in pandemic years when we know our call volume went down, more people were home, there was less calls for service. We know that that number will continue to rise in the years ahead, but we're projecting roughly about 26,500 calls for service. And that's just reactionary calls for service. That's not all the other demands on our service, the hang up 911 calls, the social development or social impact calls that we deal with, our crisis outreach calls that end up in medical calls as opposed to police calls. So those are strictly our demands for service. And as the chair has mentioned, you look at the impacts on the severity of that crime and the calls that we're dealing with. Most of these calls that you see on the screen, that 26,000, are two-person calls. And so when you get, when we're roughly running, 10 and 12 officers in our communities each shift, you get a couple of domestics, a couple of impaired drivers. It doesn't take long for those two-person calls to consume most of our resources and the demands on our services. So we continue to do what we can, and proudly, and I'll touch on it in the next slide, is our crime severity index stays fairly low, and our calls and our crime clearance rate stays quite high. So as I mentioned in the opening remarks, obviously our focus this year has been on our staffing. We know that through the costing years, and we know that in 2013, 2014, we really cut as deep as we could in the organization to survive the costing. And with that came some reductions in service. And we know that over the past year, we've really struggled to get back to where we should. So if you look at the 2019 Stats Canada report on police personnel, we look at our other comparators, and we always look at the number of officers per 100,000 population comparison. And the national average you see is 183 per 100,000 provincially, 174 per 100,000 in our neighboring services, York Region and Barrie at 134 and 163. And then South Simcoe is holding at 114 officers per 100,000. That's obviously having an impact on our ability to address the calls. And sadly, there's even been some times this past summer, I know the council's been aware of it because we've had to deal with some of the complaints that came. We haven't had the resourcing necessary to meet those demands of the call volume out in the community, and just haven't been able to get to all the calls. So this past year, we presented a report to our police services board outlining a staffing plan and a growth plan for the next 4 years. We are not so foolish to believe that we need to increase our staffing and get to those neighboring numbers in 1 year, but we are projecting the need to do that over a 4-year cycle. So you'll see in the bottom portion of the slide, our increase in 2022 is to add 9 frontline officers and 2 civilian members to get us to 121 per 100,000, then to increase a little bit more in 2023 to get us up to 122, and then 2024 and 2025, obviously increasing just slightly with our civilian and sworn members to get us to roughly 122 officers per 100,000, still well below the provincial average, but what we believe is manageable for this police service in this community to provide the level of service that we currently do. Next slide, please. I appreciate this is a fairly busy slide, and hopefully the council's had an opportunity to review the slide deck in advance as far as the cost impacts of our 2022 budget. In the first column, you'll see the revenue line. Obviously, our grants and other revenues speak to the funding opportunities that we receive, not just from the tax base, but from our grant opportunities. This budget does not include any new grants for 2022 and beyond. We know that we've just received from the provincial government the call for the community safety and policing grant, which we're hopeful to be successful in, which will obviously add to our revenue stream and reduce the budget slightly more. If you look at the next bucket, obviously the biggest increase in our budget this year is in our salaries line. We're looking at roughly a $560,000 increase for those 9 new sworn members and the 2 civilians. If you do the math, knowing that a police officer's wage is roughly $100,000 a year, obviously that 560 doesn't math out, and you sort of wonder how we can do it. Obviously, there have been significant changes, and the board has approved some of those changes organizationally to bring people in at a lower level, a recruit level, which is a little bit less than the members that are retiring at a higher level, which is allowing us to bring those 9 members into the organization with this year's budget. And that's our plan in the future years, is obviously as people leave the organization in retirement at a higher wage rate, to bring new officers in and to grow our team based on that bench strength of the front lines. Our overtime costs aren't changing, and obviously the benefit costs go up as a percentage of that wage increase. In the next bucket under there is the vehicles and marine, and you'll see there's been obviously a slight increase in our fuel costs this past year. That's obviously due to the pump price, and although we work closely with our town partners and work on bulk fuel purchases, we have had to increase that slightly based on the volume of cars and the volume of usage. But we've tried to offset that with some lower repairs and maintenance costs this year by moving some of those costs into our capital budget, or by replacing our vehicles on a regular schedule that's allowing us to keep those maintenance costs down. The last bucket, which again, you'll see in the future slides, about 90% of our budget is really in those top buckets around personnel costs. The discretional funding that you'll see in the bottom portion around clothing, contractual licenses and agreements, human resource costs. We've tried to find the savings wherever we can in some of those areas, such as maintenance, repairs, and our police services board costs, to offset some of those recruiting costs that go up. But the biggest impact, as we look at the very bottom line, is obviously a $150,000 increase in our insurance costs, which seems to be across the province. We've talked to our other provincial partners, and our town costs, that's something we're going to have to manage in the out years, but there's very limited availability, and our prices and costs for that insurance cost just continue to climb. So that's, again, the biggest impact. The bottom line, as you'll see at the very end there, is a $967,000 increase year over year from 1 year operating budget to the next, which is roughly a 4.5% increase year over year. Next slide, please. When you look at the breakdown, and I've touched on it briefly, the salaries and benefits is about 89.2% of our budget, the largest portion. So not a lot of discretionary spending beyond that 90%. Our staff development and training costs, we've tried to keep less than 1%. Our clothing and equipment, even though we're hiring new officers, we tried to keep that down by pre-ordering as much as we can out of existing years, or reusing clothing and equipment as best as we can. Technology, we know, is a huge impact on our budget with license costs. It's just less than 5%. And similarly, our facilities costs, running the 2 divisions, our insurance costs that come into that factor as well, obviously rate to about 4.5%. Our fleet, less than 2%, and any other expenses less than about 1%. And then that's offset by a revenue cost of about 2.5%. Next slide, please. Beyond our operating budget, the board has approved our capital budget, which includes a 5-year capital projection. I'll focus just on our 2022 budget. There's a couple of new items that we've addressed, and again, they're just continuing items more than new projects. They're new programs or continued programs. Our fleet, we continue to have a cycle of replacement for our fleets. Our computers, you'll see in the information technology, we've drastically brought down the budget for our computers. Obviously, as we know, through the pandemic, there was a limited ability to purchase computers. So we've carried the budget from 2021 over into 2022 to try and offset some of those costs. There's some small costs, obviously, when we're looking at our speed measuring devices and our weaponry that has to be replaced on a regular basis. But one of the big buckets that you'll see there, about $18,000 for NG 911. We know the next generation 911 is coming into effect in 2023, and we're gonna have to prepare for that, and we're trying to build the infrastructure to address that. Unfortunately, that is a cost that's being absorbed by the local taxpayers as much as we continue to lobby government to try and push that back to the CRTC companies and so some of the user fees. So next slide, please. What does that mean for the residents of Bradford, West Gwillimbury, and for the residents of Innisfil? You know, again, I'm so lucky to have such a great relationship working with our town partners and the CFOs, and they provide me with this breakdown each year when we look at the net operating budget of $22,165,550 and the capital budget of $780,000. The Innisfil portion is roughly 53.64% based on the Bradford portion of 46.36%. So the impact of this council is an operating budget of roughly 10 million and a capital of 50% shared is about 390,000. So the total impact tax for the taxpayers in Bradford is 10,666,267. When you look at the overall household assessment of 516,919 per household, what it works out to is for the average estimated household levy of roughly $664 per year, or about $12.77 per week for the policing services they receive through the South Simcoe Police Service. Obviously, there's a slight increase, that 4% increase for Bradford and about a 3.52% increase for the residents of Innisfil. And again, when we always look at how do we compare to others, because I know the members of council, you know, in presenting this budget back to our residents, if you can go to the next slide, please. We always try and look at what does that mean to the residents in comparison to others. So if you look at the graph below, you'll see our cop to pop ratio that I touched on earlier in the slide. Obviously, our partners to the north in Barrie are at about 163. Our partners to the south, being York, are about 134, and we sit somewhere in the middle at about 121 officers per 100,000. When you look at our crime severity index, which is a national index of all the crimes across all of our communities, we sit at roughly 37.1 as a ratio score based on a 100% ratio. Barrie's sitting at about 52.4 and York's at 39.1. So again, very proud of where we stand as far as our crime severity and the clearance rates that we have. But more importantly to the taxpayers, obviously, when they look at what does it cost the average household, the cost per capita for the residents of South Simcoe, and that's blended between Bradford and Innisfil, is roughly $269 per capita, compared to our partners to the north at 384 and our other policing communities to the south at 322. We think that's a pretty good deal. And again, we're proud to be able to bring that information to the board and to the council to say, you get a good value for your dollar here in South Simcoe. And we continue, as the chair talked about, to provide a blended of proactive and reactive policing. We continue to meet the needs of our community and proud of the work that we do and are hopeful that we'll be able to continue in that endeavor in 2022 and beyond. And again, happy to take any questions from council or any comments but between myself and Chair Garapi.
Okay, thank you, Chief Fletcher and Chair Garapi. So are there any questions or comments for the chief? First off, I'd just like to thank you, Chief and Chair Garapi, for coming and bringing this budget. I think that the take-home message is that there's 9 more sworn officers going to be hired this year and 2 more civilians. That's significant. And to bring that in at only a 4% budget increase, I think shows that the chief and the police service board worked hard to find other efficiencies, worked hard to be able to whittle down as much as we could any of the other expenses that we thought that we could justify lowering by a little bit of amount just to be able to hire these extra boots on the ground. So those are my comments, and I'll open it up to other members of council. So Deputy Mayor Leduc.
Your worship, just comments myself, I guess, and you said it right off the bat, and I appreciate the comments from the chair where he started with boots on the ground, and that's exactly what the budget delivered. 9 more boots on the ground helping us out, 2 more civilians. we see that we need it. We have our residents in our community talking about policing and how they want to see policing. And you mentioned it, Chief Fletcher, in the beginning, where you were taxed this summer quite heavily, and we're unable to make some of the calls, or we're unable to provide that service that you want to provide, that service level that you feel that our communities need. So appreciate that, and I understand it's very difficult to run with a budget when 90% of it is actually straight wages. I mean, I got to say that you did a great job of pulling that off and keeping it at such a low percentage for us. So we appreciate that. And I'm sure the residents appreciate that they have 9 more officers in and amongst our community looking to keep everybody safe. So appreciate the hard work that everybody does, and appreciate the board and the chief for bringing a budget that, you know what, we can all be proud of, because it does show that we're bringing in more boots on the ground. And that's what I think is very important to the residents of Bradford. So, and Innisfil. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I should add, I didn't add it in my final comments, but again, we do a true 2-year projection to the town. And, I'm happy to say, we did come in under what we projected for this year. So as your 2-year budget cycle, we were a little bit less than what we projected. So close to, again, in future years, hopefully we'll be able to continue those levels of projection as we've, working on a settlement for our collective agreements to give our people sort of a longer term plan and what we can plan for as those wages. So appreciate your comments, sir.
Okay, other comments? Councillor Contois.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, Chief Fletcher, I think this is wonderful. 9 officers out there for the community, over and above what you had, and being, I'll say, very creative to be able to afford them at a cheaper value for the residents. Now, I have one question though. I noticed that your technologies were like 4.7 in scale on your budget percentage. Is that a norm, or is this going to be a year over year kind of thing, or is this just because you had to buy some hardware or whatever this year?
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Contois, the big impact for us is user licenses. As you can appreciate with Microsoft and a lot of the other products that we're purchasing, everything's a user license now. So we continue to add people, we continue to add those licenses. And a lot of our computer-aided dispatch and our records management system are very proprietary. We are in a partnership with 5 other police agencies around our technology uses. So we try and find those efficiencies from a larger purchasing group. But unfortunately, those service providers are very few and far between. So they do hold us over a little bit of a barrel as far as those cost impacts. And everything we do, as you know, is license driven these days. And as we continue to add technology, with it comes some enhanced costs. But also happy to say that with those technologies comes some savings of officer time, and gets our people out on the front lines faster, so they're not spending as much time back in the office doing all the paperwork. Things like voice dictation and voice automation and some of those pieces are really enhancing our ability to get back out on the road faster.
If I could just speak, Mayor Keffer, just for a sec, and the chief mentioned this, but in fact, the chief has been challenged by the board to use as much civilian talent as possible, as opposed to using uniformed officers in different positions. So I'm thrilled with how that it saves the organization and to the municipalities a significant amount of money.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay, any other questions or comments? That Councillor Sandu.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Chair, Chief Fletcher, for the presentation. Under the capital budget planning under traffic, we see amounts dedicated for speed measuring devices and all that. Is there any tools available for measuring noisy vehicles like loud mufflers and stuff, or is that something that's not on the radar yet for our service to purchase?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Keffer, to Councillor Sandu, that bucket under the speed measuring devices is for all of our traffic measuring tools. So it's not just like a radar device would cost roughly about $5,000. Some of those other tools for measuring sound, decibel level, some of those pieces, Again, there are tools out there, and some of our traffic officers are using them. And I should mention, obviously, a lot of the traffic enforcement we do is in partnership with the town. And I know through the town, you've purchased a number of radar devices as well as the tools that we have. So, that really is a partnership, and that allows us to keep our budget down. Again, offset by some of those costs that both municipalities pick up for the speed measuring tools. But I can assure you there are some devices out there. They're not, again, as technically proficient as the radar devices yet. But we are, again, nothing better than that trained ear of an officer standing on the stand testifying as to how loud that muffler was.
Thank you.
Councillor Lamb.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you know, Chief, we are investigating speed measuring controls here, automatic speed controls and such. And it's my hope that if we can continue on that and work with your traffic, as you know, we send a lot of data to the local establishment or constabulary, and it would be my hope one day that we can actually send tickets or fines and school zones and stuff like that. So that would save court time and such like that, so that you can stretch your resources a little bit differently, and we can maybe deal with some of the issues that we have. So I think we can work together on that. Let's hope the province comes through with the legislation for us. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Lamb. And as you know, the use of technology is, we support that 110%. I'd much rather somebody yell and scream at a camera than yell and scream at one of my officers. So,
Councillor Dykey.
Well, it's great to have this presentation tonight. I thank you for coming forward and explaining everything to us, because at the end of the day, I still, as a councillor, the most I'm hearing is speed and traffic concerns, and as this town continues to grow, that's something we have to keep a close handle on it. And I'm glad that you're able to add 9 more officers, because as we continue to grow, this town becomes very much complex in every aspect of criminal activity and changing as we've evolved as a community. So I'm glad to see things are moving forward, and you're able to keep a close eye on the budget and do the best you can. And when you look at other municipalities, to see the different numbers and how fortunate we are compared to York Region and Barrie, our budget's definitely a lot cheaper and it's more affordable for all the residents. So thanks for putting that in a graphic form.
thanks, Councillor.
Councillor Orr.
I don't want to belabor the comments, because a great report, Chief, and thank you for what you're doing and bringing on the more officers. I just wanted to comment a little, as maybe I'm the insurance guy, but your insurance price is going up, and unfortunately, our people are using the insurance companies as a wallet, which in turn jacks up all the prices to everybody. And this is going to be even more so, as the courts usually favor the people to let the insurance companies pay. And we'll just take that for what's happened in the snow plowing industry, where the many of the snow plowers in small communities, even farmers, are told now not to even snow plow or pull out cars or do anything for people. And there's many roads that weren't going to get snow plowed up in the north because people have gone out, and it's just because of the amount of claims. So that's something that's going to carry on, and we'll have to deal with.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. We are working closely with our municipal partners and other policing partners to see if we can, find some partnered insurance. But the risk and liability that's out there every day is just climbing and climbing. And the town has insurance on the road that we're driving on, and then we have to have insurance on our cars that are driving on those roads, and insurance on our officers are driving the cars, and it really gets to be a bit much after a while.
Okay, with that, a lot of good comments. Thank you, Council. So thank you for the deputation. I'll just ask our CAO. well, we just received the presentation. Do we approve the police budget? Do we have to do that? I think we've already gone through our budget process, but I'll just ask our CEO if what is the proper way to receive this presentation, Jeff?
Thanks, Mayor Keffery. Yes, really the step in front of council tonight is to receive the presentation. You have already essentially endorsed or approved our share of the budget through the, well, formally our budget will be in front of council tonight, further to committee's consideration of it a couple of weeks ago, but it's been incorporated into that document that you'll be considering later on.
Okay, thank you. So with that, can I have a mover and a seconder to receive the Police Service Board 2022 budget? Councillor Faragini and Councillor Lamb. Any further comments? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? And it is carried. Okay, thank you, Chief. Thank you, Chair Garapi.
Thank
Thank you, Mayor.
Keffer,
Thank you,
and all the
Council.
councillors.
Really appreciate your support.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So with that, we'll move on to item 8.2, and it's the Community Improvement Plan engagement. And we have with us Jonathan Hack, Director of Sierra Planning and Management. And we have a presentation and to go over our community improvement plans that we have in our municipality. And we have staff members, Mike Kemp with us as well, if we do have any questions. But with that, I'll turn it over to Jonathan Hack.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council and members of staff. So this evening, I'm going to give a brief overview through a slide deck. You will have received an 88-page document that lays out the results of the work that we've been undertaking. If I can go to the next slide, please, Madam Clerk. And just to remind everyone of what we've been doing since September of this year, the purpose of this particular exercise is to look at the community improvement plans in terms of their history and the history of success, and how the use of that particular financial tool as part of economic development and community development has evolved over the years that it's been used, since essentially 2013, and to give council, as well as members of staff, as well as members of those evaluation committees, the opportunity to really outline any considerations that they think are relevant, either in the way of an opinion on what should be the next step in community improvement planning, or questions raised, so that we can then undertake this as part of a more formal review of the community improvement plans in 2022. So the process that was undertaken resulted in a fairly large report. Some of the material you've seen already, in as much as it was summary material at the back of the report that went through a backgrounder of the community improvement plan, plus the results of 2 surveys that were undertaken. But just to summarize the process here, it was an engagement with council, senior management and evaluation committees, and that included the Bradford Board of Trade. Representatives were asked if they would be willing to fill out an opinion survey, and I think several did. That was the process that was followed, and it was two surveys, one explicitly for council, and then really the same questions, but asked of the evaluation committees and the boards of trade. And then, if you recall, I think it was September the 23rd, we had a special council meeting where we went through and spent a couple of hours looking at the results of that survey and getting a bit more of a drill down on council's opinions. And that was very helpful for us to see council's commitment to the principle of CAPs, but also recognizing that nothing needs to stay the same forever. And if the job has been completed in part, maybe there's an adjustment of the process that's required. So I think that the intention of the town's economic development department here is to take this information and feed it into a process for review. So the purpose is to set those questions out, and at the back end of our report that council received, there is an outline of what we think the scope of work might be. Next slide, please, Madam Clerk. So now I'm just going to, just for everyone's benefit, try and summarize what was in all of that information. And if you are looking at our report again, it's the first sort of 10 or 11 pages that is most relevant. But in terms of this presentation, the Downtown Community Improvement Plan, it was the first one that was done in 2012 and then operationalized in 2013. I think it's fair to say it's been very successful, with almost $1 million, 900,000 and 926,000 approved. A large, almost 50% of that in facade improvement with clear benefits. And then also in terms of the renovations program, which is a larger program to provide for renovation of buildings, both the interior as well as the exterior. That's been used roughly around 25 to 30% of the funding. Next slide, please. The area, obviously everyone knows downtown Bradford, but I think the area is the emphasis, that this is a plan that's focused on downtown, and there were some comments raised by members of council that perhaps going forward the opportunity is to think about whether the current extent of the boundaries of downtown remain relevant or whether they should be changed. I won't go into the arguments for and against or which areas should be amended, because I think that's part of a process that needs to follow for a comprehensive review, because it's a fundamental part of the plan is to define the project area. But there was comment made about being able to tackle some of the issues that are emerging outside of the downtown. And Bond Head, for example, was identified. There was talk about the employment lands outside of the downtown, including the 400 highway employment lands as well, and what role, if any, was there for CIP. So these are all really helpful and excellent focus points for review. But the purpose of this slide is that downtown is a very linear approach. And back when we were looking at this almost 10 years ago, we recognized that you have to look north and south of the main commercial street as well, and seek to try and sort of increase the commercial opportunities north and south as well as just east and west. And I think the result, if I can just sort of summarize what I heard from council, was there's a recognition that the plan has been successful. The downtown is in a better place than it was commercially speaking, and in terms of real estate now as opposed to in 2013. And it's not just the buoyancy of the real estate market that's resulted in that, and it's not just the fact that the town has continued to grow, but the downtown has taken advantage of these very good economic circumstances that the town finds itself in, so that the plan has a continued role. And I think that's the message we took away from that. Next slide, please. Having said that, and despite the sort of the very balanced approach in terms of the funding that's been provided, there were observations. Council was very helpful in providing us with a little sort of itinerary of things that need to be considered, some of which I've just mentioned. But certainly in terms of the success of the facade, landscape and signage program, certainly review it, make sure it's following current practice that is being adopted in other places in the province, but essentially maintain it. So too for program 2. Program 2 always runs the risk of funding development activities within buildings, renovations, which might not be totally visible And there is a question of the degree to which certain projects should be funded from a CIP because they generate a benefit in sustaining the building over a period of time, an older stock building, a heritage building that is beneficial to the public as a whole, versus standard wear and tear items that every building owner has to face, every couple of decades, new roofs, new windows, things like that. So I think the result of that is, in any review, let's focus on eligibility. Let's make sure that things are as tight as they need to be to ensure that the money is used as effectively as it can be, but recognize that, $250,000 went to some very good projects, and we just have to maintain a focus on good projects going forward. Look at Bond Head as a potential project area and review the boundaries in general. And also, there's still work to be done on securing the sustainability of downtown. Next slide. There you have it in terms of focus. I don't need to go into everything, but in terms of the total numbers of people on council that were responding, I think is an indication here of what council has agreed as a group, which is that business retention and expansion, commercial property is a focus, as is heritage, and recognize, the role of downtown going forward. There was less concern with it being an area for major residential development or major new commercial development, because that is happening outside of the downtown or on the fringes. But sticking to the core opportunity here, which is to maintain the quality of the building stock, so that there is an iconic downtown, similar to Orangeville and other places that you see that have good linear commercial districts. Next slide. So that dealt with the downtown, and on the industrial one, this was very the message that we took away from the discussion, which again was a great discussion, looking at the details of the success of these programs, was that the industrial area community improvement plan should certainly be renewed and extended and adjusted accordingly. But as a tool for economic development, it has some good merit. So far, since 2013, a $1.4 million purse has been put forward, and the majority of which has been funded through development charge grants, which are not the cheapest, but there have been some other funds used to assist with renovation and things of that nature within 2 industrial districts that the town has. So if you just turn to the next slide. So these are the 2 industrial or employment districts. One, the Artesian; the other one is the newer development. And the opportunity here is should we extend it? Should we contract it? Should it go elsewhere? And the upshot of that was, aside from the geography, what we really should be focusing on is there a more surgical way to look at investment? Because I think everyone recognized that funding industrial area improvement projects has good potential to maintain employment and higher order employment, but we need a way of sort of making sure that that's almost certain. And so the current plan does not specify particular sectors that might be focused on higher density employment and higher value added development. And I think that's where the review will go. And then the question of whether or not you extend incentives to the Highway 400 employment lands. That one is, I think that debate will come back. In the short time we had to discuss it, it was clear that the fact of these lands being at 400 interchange is an incentive in itself in terms of its geographic advantages. There are some challenges to development as it relates to servicing and so forth. And there really is a question mark as to whether or not the CIP is the most suitable tool for that. So that'll be part of a review. But that was the sentiment that we heard both from staff and from council. Next slide. This really just summarizes what I just indicated. There's been that in terms of the direction going forward, I think there's a strong support, but maybe it should be more targeted. Perhaps it should focus on smaller cap grants, so a smaller level of funding, but for more projects, and potentially really make a focus, a pivot onto the use of tax increment grants as opposed to continuing to utilize the DC program. Just to remind everyone, out of that 1.4 million, 900,000 is currently paid for through a development charge grant program, which is a grant that has to be paid out of a CIP reserve one way or the other. Next slide. Again, so the review will certainly need to take a review of which industries might be targeted. These were some that council threw out. I don't imagine that council members in identifying these are saying that they're exclusive. They were just good ideas to put forth for discussion. But certainly the idea of focusing on higher order employment, as well as employment that reflects Bradford's agricultural heritage as well, and the fact that it's there for food processing. These are things which can be opportunistic. There will be an interesting discussion as to whether offices are in the mix, and how that should play out. And so this will be a very interesting review if and when the municipality undertakes that. Next slide. So the seniors housing CIP, this is a very good example, and I know that everyone appreciates that, but in terms of the landscape of plans across the province, this is a really good example of economic development where there was perceived to be a need to incentivize the development of seniors housing. The plan was able to be developed to do that. It was implemented, its development was secured, there was incentive funding that was provided, and then the plan was suspended because it had achieved its purpose. And I think everyone in the meetings that we had agreed that, as written, in terms of for-profit seniors housing, it's met the mandate of putting in seniors housing. And again, it's not cheap, but it met that goal. But going forward, there needs to be changes. So to summarize, if you go to the next slide, it's just 2 more slides. This one is, what was interesting is that the concept or the framework that this plan deals with, which is housing, that obviously is in the minds of council and staff, and I would extend that to members of the committees, and then perhaps the public at large, if you were to engage with the public. So the idea of addressing issues such as, aging in place for seniors, or affordability through a diversity of housing choices. These are things which, from downtown Toronto to Barrie and beyond, these are all questions which are being asked in terms of how we get that balance in affordability. So it wasn't that seniors housing as written, the CIP should stay in place. I think everyone recognized that should go, but in its place, there's an opportunity. As to what that opportunity is, I think that's the work that has to be undertaken. Next slide. So the next slide, as council is aware, is that the intention is that what we've done here, which is a fair degree of consultation, but internal consultation principally, can help scope what that review should be. And if you do take a chance to look through the report, we outline what we think the prospective elements of a comprehensive CIP review would be. And in short, it is a level of research that needs to be undertaken to make sure that the town of Bradford, West Gwillimbury, is fully apprised of what other municipalities are doing, because 7 to 8 years is a long time in community improvement planning, and there are a lot of different approaches that are taken across the province. So that is one step. A fuller engagement strategy with the business community, with the property owners and others would be warranted. And then a real consideration of things like the areas. How do you approach the opportunity in Bond Head or other areas, or older commercial plazas that might need some assistance? But either way, once you get through that, it would then be to draft a CIP. So we call it an update, but you may be rewriting some programs and reestablishing priority areas. And then, of course, it has to address evaluation as well. And the town has done a good job in that, because we've been working on it and fine-tuning that over the years. But that's what needs to happen. So that's it in a nutshell. That's the last slide. So I could hand it back to you, Mr. Mayor. I'll take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. So questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Scott?
Just before I ask my question, I just wanted to, for pecuniary interest declaration, I stepped out during the seniors housing portion because I have clients who use that fund. My one question was on the timeline in terms of the review starting the work in 2022. In some senses, I thought we did that already. And I guess if it was just internal, you want to do more stakeholder consultation. But what's the timeline to have a new CIP to council so we could have one in place?
I actually would defer to, if Mike Kemp is here, because I think that's a decision of the municipality. From a consultant's perspective, Councillor Scott, this can be done within 4 to 5 months in terms of consultation and review and redrafting. But I'll let Mike speak to that.
I'll ask Mike Kemp to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, members of council. I think that Q1 is what we'll be aiming for a broader discussion on this. I think John's done an admirable job about boiling down the successes we've had on all 3 programs and where council is identifying we can go with the program. So I believe we'll be following that in the first 3 months. And if there is, if council wishes to get them back online again quickly, that's what we'd pursue.
Deputy Mayor Leduc.
Thank you, Your Worship. I certainly would love to see Q1 for sure, the end of Q1, having them back online. Really interested in reinventing the seniors program. I think there's opportunities for us to change that, or at least look at that again. I trust me, I love all 3 of them. I thought when you look at the report, I thank you, Jonathan, for that report. It looks interesting, and there was some great money spent here. And I do want us to look at the fact with the DC grant and the tax increment grant. I want to see if we can blend that together, because I think there's still great opportunities. I can tell you right now, the best one I've ever seen was when we brought in the Aurora one for $100,000. There was a $78 million investment in our community, and it created hundreds of jobs. Those are the ones we want to see. And I know that when it comes to DC grants, it's not something that we like, because we have to pay for that. We pay for that back. But I think I want to have a blend. I want to make sure that there's good opportunity for us to look at all options and look at all ways to deal with this, because there could be that diamond in the rough that's just waiting there for great growth within our industrial area. So I think that when it comes to industrial CIP, I think it's been a real good one, because I would love to see in your report the actual number of jobs that were created by the $1.4 million that we spent. So it would be nice to see if that was in there, because I'm sure there was many jobs that came out of that CIP program. But look forward to seeing that, and I hope we see that at the end of the first quarter for sure, to put our stamp on it, to see if we can move forward some of these CIPs. Audrey, I like the fact, yes, let's look at Bond Head. I think it's a great opportunity to look at Bond Head and deal with that. So just wait and see this come through, and hopefully we can put. Now, I guess my question is maybe to Michael Kemp. you say you're going to stakeholder, are you looking at setting up a committee of some sort to review this, or what's the step? What's the process that we're going to go to the first quarter? Who's getting involved?
Certainly, we've already heard from stakeholders. We've had members of council, members of staff, and certainly we've had some good input from the directors of the Bradford Board of Trade as a starter group, Mr. Deputy Mayor. For council's benefits, we've always had a member of the Bradford Board of Trade on the evaluation committee for the downtown program. So I think it's integral to have them as well. And we'll be working with Jonathan as to whether we need to go broader than that. I think we have a good starting point with the discussion back in September and the recap tonight. And I will just ask Jonathan Hack, do you see a need to go beyond those stakeholder groups in the consultation?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Mike, no, I think you've got to be careful with the consultation. I think that you need to focus on some of the property owners, certainly the businesses, and maybe some of the businesses that are or the industry associations, finding out whether or not that, if you focus on particular target sectors, whether Bradford's going to be in a position. So good intel, I think, is the answer. You want to have good intel on this stuff. At the end of the process, when you're updating the plan, the ministry will take the view that it is a material change to these plans. And so there'll be a formal public process, but I don't think you need to go out and do big, broad surveys of the public at large. Just hold the required stat meetings.
Okay, Councillor Dykey.
A good insight, great presentation. Going through the pandemic, we see that a few footprints, a few holes, and I know in the downtown core, and I'm sure whenever owners take place or revitalize or come back, they're going to need some kind of facial or some help to kickstart it. But I also want to mention it, one broader scope of one little problem we have in this community is that we have at least 200 acres of industrial land sitting, and to get these developers motivated enough to service it. I'm sure Michael Camp, Michael DeSanto, myself, just being involved in a business community, I get calls all the time from different customers and friends are looking to relocate from Toronto to here. And we have the opportunity, but we don't have some of these developers. And I don't want to point out where the lands are, but all the councillors are quite aware of where these stagnant lands are sitting. But I don't know how a CIP program or how Jeff's department or planning department can motivate these landholders to start servicing lands to benefit everybody, taxation, jobs, the whole 9 years. I don't know if the CIP program could kind of initialize that program, or I was just thinking outside the box because I see it, we drive by it, we see it, we get calls, and we really can't. Our hands are tied. We're very fortunate that 400 lands, a lot of it has been sold, and a lot of good things are coming. But we have stuff in the older community areas of town that can benefit us, and you don't have to build these monster pipes miles long to service these lands, and something to look at the end of the day. But the CIBC program it's important for us to keep it going because we're still not out of this pandemic, and there's going to be buildings vacant, and they are vacant, and there's people are going to need that kickstart or facade program or fire department help or building permit help or whatever it is. It's there. It was going to benefit the whole municipality, and we've got to keep it alive. And thanks for your presentation. Those are my comments.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Dykey. Councillor Kantoa.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. No, good presentation. I was up quite late last night reading all of that. Quite informative. But I was a little concerned when it got to the the DC and the grants, especially in the industrial. I know it's fantastic. It brings jobs, brings expansion. But has anybody sat down to figure out if it's going to have a negative impact down the road? That's one question. How much can we afford to actually go out at a time? So how many projects can we actually do? Because some of these projects are huge. So a couple of questions. I'm not sure about this aspect of it. That's why I'm asking. So I'll let someone handle the question.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Contois. And Jonathan, I think it's the size of the DC grants that we've been giving out, the sustainability of that. So, Jonathan?
Well, I'll answer it, but I think, not sure if Jeff wants to weigh in as well. But I think when we initially did that exercise, I think there were eyes wide open that in providing a development charge grant, it was potentially going to be a sizable level of assistance. And so some of the evaluation criteria were very much geared to the economic benefits associated with getting that return. So that's kind of below the line stuff. But we also did look at when, if you were to do that, what were the taxes that would be generated? And so from a financial perspective, is it sustainable? An upfront grant versus a back-ended grant, like a tax increment grant, we would say if you can focus on tax increment grants, that's the way to go. But at the outset, there were reasons why you had to focus on DC grants. But I'm not sure if Mike or anyone else has any comment to add on the measuring of it. I would just say that the Deputy Mayor's observation about getting some metrics on the employment that was generated is a good first step to sort of making sure that any continuation of that plan has some solid foundations. I think that goes to Councillor Contois' observation as well.
Is that all right, Councillor Contois? Do you want the CAO to comment? Jeff, maybe Jeff, do you want to just your view of it?
Thanks, Your Worship. Anytime where Council has evaluated an application for a DC grant under our CIP programs, and in particular, they came up during the senior housing program, through the staff report that recommends the various options and directions, there is a financial analysis included in that report that spells out what the repayment timeframe is for that grant based on the new tax generated by the property that Jonathan was referring to. So obviously, depending on the significance of the grant, there's going to be a longer payback. But it did work quite well for the two housing projects that were delivered. It's certainly a topic that came up through the surveys and discussions we've had with council and staff as part of this review. And while the option is still on the table moving forward with whatever revised or new programs you might want us to develop, I guess I would suggest that we should use that tool quite judiciously and hold on to it for council's highest priority type of initiatives. But we'll get into those discussions further as the review rolls out early next year.
Councillor Contois?
Well, it was vague, but so I guess at the end of the day, is there going to be some sort of analysis to figure out if we can sustain large DC grants forgiveness over time? So that's kind of my question, right? So is there going to be a negative impact on the road? So I'll let you answer that in an email tomorrow, but it's just kind of a question.
I think, Councillor Contois, that'll be good research that comes back with the report, maybe, just to be able to give us direction of whether the DC grant, should be not utilized as much, and more the tax deferral initiative could be used. So if we can, we'll certainly make note of that and try and get you an answer. But, other questions or comments, Councillor Scott?
I just want to really emphasize something the Deputy Mayor and I think both alluded to. We started this process in September because we wanted to minimize the period when we wouldn't have a CIP in place. And based on the discussion tonight, we wouldn't have a CIP in place until the end of March 2022. Presumably, we would then need some time to take in new applications. And so we wouldn't be approving any new grants into May or June next year. And then this council has the potential to be lame duck. So there is some urgency here. This was an interesting report, but it was really a report that reported back on things we had already said. And so I just want to make the point that there is some urgency to get a new CIP in place. And I think the consultant just said there could be a risk of over consulting with stakeholders. I think we generally have an idea of where we want to go, and we need to get to the place where we're asking people and stakeholders to review the changes we want to make, not blue skying this, because there is a clock on this term of council that's very real.
Thanks, Councillor Scott. I'll just get it reaffirmed that maybe Michael Kemp, but are we taking applications now for the downtown community improvement plan, or is it on hiatus until this new program? I was under the understanding that it was still carrying on, but maybe if you can shed light on that.
I can speak to that, Mr. Mayor. We've done intake up until about 2 weeks ago, recognizing that the programs are set to complete on December 31st. We have a number that will be coming on the next agenda for council's consideration, and with everybody moving quickly to get in before the deadline, you're going to see some applications coming forward in January as well.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
Sorry,
so
Mr. Mayor, I dropped off there. There shouldn't be too much of a lag in the program. I think we've heard loud and clear where council is pushing us to consider where to go with the programs, and we'll work judiciously to get them back online if that is council's wish.
Yes, and in the budget process, we did put, I believe it was $250,000 into the community improvement plan for 2022. So we did commit as far as that budget process for the year 2022. So it did show that our council support was there. And I think it's important to realize that this council can use other tools, maybe not as good as the community improvement plan, but to help our businesses, manufacturers, industries, if they are locating to our town. We do have programs when the actual development charges are due to the town. We can adjust that as long as we're assured the development charges are coming, but we can have a phased approach to that. One thing that the County of Simcoe is doing a little differently, I think, this year is provincial legislation allows a 50% increase in an expansion of a business that is already here without development charges. Before, my understanding was that once you made a 50% expansion, you couldn't expand anymore, or you'd have to pay the development charges. But I believe they're wanting to change that and having a base square footage for each industry, probably in 2021. And so that there might be the opportunity to be able to expand again and not have to pay up to 50% again and not have to pay development charges on that expansion. So that'll be interesting to see if that materializes. And So there are other options that I think council has been very proactive with to be able to help our businesses, and that we'll continue on with the community improvement plan and anything else that we can do under our control to help our downtown and to help the industrial areas. So any other comments or questions? Otherwise, I think if I could have a mover and a seconder to receive the report. And Councillor Contois, Councillor Orr, any further comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? And it is approved. So thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Michael. So we'll move on to item 9, which is open forum. So I'll ask our clerk if anybody has sent in anything for open forum.
No, Your Worship, there's no submissions for open forum tonight.
Okay, so we'll move on to agenda item 10.1, Committee of the Whole recommendations. So it's recommendation, the committee recommendation COW 2021-86, COW 2021-92 be approved in the minutes of the special committee of the whole budget deliberations meeting dated November the 8th to 10th, 2021, be adopted as printed. So a mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Sandu, Councillor Ferragini. Comments or questions? That this is with our budget deliberations. We had 3 days of budget deliberations, and I think we came out with a budget that still has a lot of initiatives for our residents, but we tried to keep the tax increase as low as possible. And we did hear the Police Service Board budget. I think there's an opportunity from what we've heard that might even be a little bit lower than what we had thought of, just that there is grant money coming in, and with the police 2021 financial statement, they are looking at a positive, they'll be under budget by a significant amount, and that money goes to help pay for the capital projects for 2022. So until the year end, that was just an estimate, but I think that the way things are tracking, that it might be a little bit better than what was indicated in the presentation. So that's good news. And I know in our council agenda, there is the financial report that we have coming up, and showing where we are at until October with our finances. So that's looks promising as well. So anyways, we have a recommendation on the floor. So with that, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? And it is carried. The next recommendation is the committee recommendation COW 2021-93 to COW 2021-100 be approved in the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting dated November the 16th, 2021 be adopted as printed. Mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Dykey, Councillor Contois. Any items you wish pulled for further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. 10.2, adoption of council minutes. Recommendation that the minutes of the regular council meeting dated November the 16th, 2021 be adopted as printed. Mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Dykey, Councillor Scott. Any comments? Call for the vote. All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. The next recommendation is the minutes of the special council public planning meeting dated November 23rd, 2021 be adopted as printed. Mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Orr, Deputy Mayor Leduc. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And it is carried. We'll move on to correspondence for action. So implementation of wayfinding signage for Tour de Holland cycling route. So the recommendation is that council endorse the route for the Tour de Holland cycling route, and the town staff be requested to install signage as required on the Bradford West Gwillimbury portion of the route. Mover and a seconder for this? Deputy Mayor Leduc, Councillor Sandu, comments or questions? Councillor Contois.
So we're gonna put signage out. Who is this group, first of all? Second of all, if we put the signage out and something happens, are we liable? Is it organized? Do they have police escorts? There's lots of questions. So I'll leave that to staff or somebody to respond.
Okay, I wonder, Rebecca, do you know?
I know a little bit about this, Your Worship. It's not like an event. It is more like, like you have a wine tour or historic tour or that kind of tour. So it's an organization that promotes cycling through Ontario. And this route is the tour of the Holland Marsh route, so that people can go to their website. Membership, it's cyclist aficionados can go. This was requested through the county. It's done through King Township as well, and the request came from the county to promote this. Essentially, it's a bit of a tourism promotion, and we thought it was a great idea to try to promote cycling. An opportunity to start to promote cycling in Bradford. Really, someone else is doing it. There's a portion of it that goes through Bradford, and it's been approved or sort of reviewed through transportation. So it's really just to kind of get council's approval at the cost of putting up these signs, which is not very significant at all to promote this route.
Any other comments, Deputy Mayor?
No, this is a great opportunity for us to promote cycling, and I know it's endorsed by Simcoe, I think it is, or Simcoe Cycle. They've come to Bradford and done a presentation, and this area is a big cycling area, and it's great for the marsh. I think in the end, I don't think the cyclists bother the farmers. I don't really believe they bother the farmers that much. It's not speeding vehicles, so they're not pushing the tractors off the road, and it's a great opportunity for tourism around the area. So. There's big opportunities in cycling. It's becoming a bigger and bigger event, and our area is actually, I know a lot of cyclists from Toronto, the city of Toronto, from the University of Toronto, come up here and actually cycle up in this area because they love it. They ride all the way up, and they love it up here. They think it's the greatest place to cycle. So I know we sometimes we get some motorists who are a little upset with big, large cycle gangs, but I think they're a healthy group, and I think it's good for the environment. It's good for people to come out and cycle. So I'm all in favor of this. I think it's a great opportunity for us to partner with King and York Region to promote some of our areas, the Holland Marsh Winery and other areas in the Holland Marsh that cyclists can enjoy. Thank you.
Councillor Lamb?
Just to piggyback on what James says, I think it's pretty cool, except that I hope they obey the rules of the road. We have seen piles of cyclists go barreling out off Canal Road onto Highway 11 or other places. And I notice on the map, they got to cross Highway 27 and various things like that. So I would hope that they follow the rules of the road, because cars and tractors are supposed to as well. Thank you.
Yes, I think it's great if it was initiated by King Township or county cycling groups, but no, to be able to have a cycling route from the King City GO train station all the way up to Bradford's GO train station, and coming up through Schomberg and up into the Highlands and then across and then back down into the marsh and following the Canal Bank Road. I know that as the Deputy Mayor said, there's a lot of cyclists now on our road. Yeah, we'll see a group of 20 sometimes, and no, it's good to have them in our area and be able to enjoy the countryside. And I think that it's a great tourist opportunity, anyways, to let people know about Bradford West Gwillimbury. Other comments, Councillor Scott, and then Councillor Contois.
I really can't believe I'm saying this, but I will just add it's also an excellent example of franglais, which is a proud Canadian tradition.
Thanks, Councillor Scott. And Councillor Contois.
Listen, I'm all in favor of activities, guys, but it still doesn't answer my question. Do we have any liabilities that can be forced onto the community if something happens? So we're supplying signs, no problem. So I guess just arrows, whatever is required. I have no problem with it whatsoever, but once you endorse it, are you then endorsing liabilities if something occurs? So that's my question. Other than that, I'm all in favor of it. I hope they have insurance of some sort, maybe. I don't know. Does anybody have the answers to that one? Do they require it? Because it is an event. It's no different than us doing Carrot Fest. It's an event. We have to be insured on the main street. So I don't know if we have lapsing insurance that covers that.
I'll ask our Rebecca to comment.
Thanks to Councillor Contois for your question. It's not an event, actually, and it's not even promoted by the town, so I would say that there's no increase in liability. Any of these, I guess bicycle organizations quite often do rides and come to town. It's just the standard use of our public highways. I'm going to say, we're not endorsing this route per se. We do have to be aware of multiple users of our highways, and the same with bicyclists or promoting any of those things. We do have to be aware that they're being used by those users, and our highways have to be maintained to that purpose. But this program in particular does not increase any kind of liability other than through the general use of public highways that everyone has a right to use.
Okay, that Councillor Orr, you're in agreement with that, or is it?
Thank you, Your Worship. No, I think Rebecca said it quite well. It's whether there's the fact that they're on the road and something happens and they deem they were liable will be part of the action no matter what. So whether it's a sign out to say this is a route that's preferred or whatever, it doesn't really matter. If they decide that we were at fault, even if there's no signs, then it could be a liable action.
Okay. We've had a good discussion. That I do have a recommendation in front of us. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote then. All those in favor? Any opposed? And it is carried. Okay, we'll move on to item 12, staff reports. 12.1, report of Finance Department, and it's the October 31st, 2021 financial results. So the recommendation is that report FIN 2021-19 entitled October 31st, 2021 financial results be received for information. Mover and a seconder for this. Deputy Mayor Leduc, Councillor Contois, comments or questions? Okay, again, a good report that shows us where we're at. When we were doing our budget deliberations, we had a pretty good idea where we would be at the end of October, but this finalizes what it is. That so I guess I have one question. Let's see. It's to do with the taxes written off. There's $306,000. So this is on can't even find page 100 and page 6 of 44 of the report, page 137 of 190. So I don't know, as our Director of Finance here, that it's the summary of the property taxes so far, and it just shows that it appears like there's a fair amount of taxes written off. So just wondering if that's normal. or what that entailed. So I see our Ian is here. So Ian, any comment with that?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Unfortunately, we did have some, obviously, through the report, some significant property tax write-offs. These are write-offs that were approved by MPAC through minutes of settlement and other tools and measures that they have. And you know, many times before, we've had some large write-offs covering multiple years of appeals, typically related to big box stores. And this is what we experienced again in 2021. There was a significant appeal put forward by one of the big box stores in town, and they were successful. And that write-up was for multiple years. So unfortunately, we can't account for these items until they actually materialize. So that $306,000 represents the town's share of that write-off. And you know, there are other write-offs throughout the year. Of course, there's not just a single write-off that this is responsible for. But this is multiple years of taxes all in one transaction that are being refunded back to the property owner. So unfortunately, the big box stores, they have been very successful launching their appeals through MPAC. And it's not just for, you know, the Bradford location per se. They'd be launching their appeals based for the benefit of all of their big box locations across the province. So this is something that unfortunately other municipalities are likely experiencing as well. And you know, our appeals are being defended by MTE through the county Simcoe. So we do have a voice at those appeal tables as well, but unfortunately the property owners are being you know, in this case, successful in having their assessments reduced, and then we're required to process the appropriate tax adjustments.
Okay, thank you for that, Ian. But I guess I was forgetting it could be multiple years that added it up to that amount, so that is maybe understandable then. They can go back 3 years. Any other questions or comments? Okay, we just look forward to the year-end results just to see, and hopefully we still have a surplus at the end, and that'll help our reserves out. So seeing no other questions, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? And it is carried. Item 12, staff reports. Is there any requests for staff reports? Councillor Orr?
Thank you, Your Worship. And this might be a little premature, but it's been brought up to me by a couple of people and concerned, and this has to do with the new garbage bins and being left at the ends of the roads and littered all over, not being secured closer to the houses. And these people, few people are concerned that they're blowing over, whether we need to have some anything to do with a bylaw so people will bring their bins back closer to the house or secure them so that things aren't blowing around. So I said I would bring it up and ask for a report on it. I'm maybe a little too, it might be a little too premature at this point to see, but people are concerned of the fact that people are leaving them right out by the road and not bringing them in. So if it could be put in as a staff report for maybe, it doesn't have to be immediate, but to watch for what's happening and any complaints that we are getting that something might be in the wind down the road.
Thanks, Councillor Orr. Deputy Mayor, do you want to comment?
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Councillor, for bringing that up. But I'm just wondering if that's the folks that are a little upset with the large size bins and they're waiting for the county to exchange those bins for them. So we do have that happening in January with the full exchange happening in February. Hopefully that will get to everybody by February. So maybe we could just, again, yeah, the staff report, if we could just maybe hold off on it a little bit just to see if that's the issue. And you know, I don't know how many complaints you're getting, but if you if you want to send them through to me, I'll certainly deal with them. But I would hope that it's just people trying to get, they don't want to take those big bins back. There's a few of them that are still mad, I think, but that's going to change. So.
Yeah, no, I agree, Deputy Mayor. That definitely is. I said I would bring it up and ask for whether it be a bylaw put in place. And like I said, it might be a little premature at this point, but it's something that we might have to deal with definitely in the future. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Dyke.
Mature or not, sooner or later, the county, it's in our municipality, whatever the county is going to do. But we do have in the different parts of the downtown core, there's apartments on the second floor, and all these units are rolling around on the sidewalk. So staff, bylaw, county department, or whoever will have to have a look at this, or even the landlords have to take the initiative or be told how to come up with a solution to store these. And every day we have. They're around, the winds, people kicking them, pushing them. It's something we have to address and to keep to beautify our downtown core too. These units aren't the most attractive when you drive through town. So it's a good point that Ron brought up. Thanks, Ron.
Okay, Councillor Contois.
Yeah, I'm not sure how staff wants to handle this one, either through a staff report or whatever methodology you want to use. But when we last went to arbitration with the firefighters, we were forced to go to a 24-hour shift. But there was supposed to be, we're supposed to analyze whether or not 12-hour shifts were more efficient and cost-effective versus 24-hour shifts. And I've never seen that report. I believe it probably should have went through human resources. But I think with everything that we're looking at for the fire departments, it would be nice to know whether or not 24-hour shifts are costing us more money than a 12-hour shift. So anyways, just for information's sake and the fact that we're supposed to have it reviewed anyways.
Okay, so are we all right with that? We're requesting that the staff report on the wheeled carts and the issue of where they're stored between use, and then a second staff report just looking at the 24-hour shift, how that's working out with the fire service. Mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Dyke, Councillor Contois. Any further comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Any opposed? And it is carried. And so, okay. Move on to item 14 then, Committee of the Whole. So the recommendation is that Council resolve itself into Committee of the Whole to consider matters of the Committee of the Whole agenda dated December the 7th, 2021. So mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Dyke, Councillor Ferragini, all in favor? It is carried. So I'll hand it over to the Deputy Mayor. Do we need a break, or are we able to carry on? I think we can carry on. So Deputy Mayor, over to you.
We'll make it fast for Committee of Whole for everybody, just in case. All right, so I'll call the meeting to order at 8:34. Recommendation that the Committee of Whole agenda dated December 7th, 2021 be adopted as amended to revise the recommendation for item 4.1, report DES 2021-56. Mover and seconder, put this on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Contois, seconded by Councillor Sandu. Questions, concerns with the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried, thank you. All right, moving right into 4.1, report of development engineering services recommendation report applications for official plan and zoning bylaw amendments and draft plan of subdivision owner / applicant, Pantheon Group, agents Bill Tung, Marshall Smith, file number D09-1901 and D14-19-08, D12-19-05. May I put, can I get, Rebecca, can you put that motion on the floor? That goes forever. And is there a, just the motion, so can we put that? Thank you. So if everybody saves me reading it, everybody can see it. And I'll ask for a mover and seconder, just put it on the floor. I'm sorry, I didn't get a mover and seconder. So can I get Councillor Orr? And let's see, have I got, sorry, I've seen Councillor Orr and Councillor Lamb. Thank you. And so it is in the Pantheon. Are we doing, we're not doing a presentation on it, correct? So the recommendation is about 68. Sorry. It's about the development. It's a planning development. And it's official plan zoning amendment, draft of subdivision lands at 563 Simcoe Road. Any questions or concerns with this report? No, it's right at the corner. Councillor Scott.
I just want to comment that it's another nice infill development. And I want to thank our Director of Planning, our Director of Community Services, and our Director of Engineering for taking the time. I had asked why there wasn't a trail connecting the rear of this property into the adjacent Bradford East subdivision. That does have a large trail through the forest and hydro corridor that's in there. And the four of us got together on Monday and looked at it. And the problem is the stream in there is actually a municipal drain. It's too wide and the banks are too precarious to do anything other than a very large and expensive bridge. So although the properties, town, hydro, this development and the neighboring development all do abut each other, we couldn't get it to work engineering wise. But I do want to thank the staff for taking the time to between Friday and yesterday to take a good look at it. And I hope that'll be something we always look at in these infill developments. We have some more coming up at Lions Park where we want to make sure they connect back into the community that they're coming into. In this case, it just doesn't work out. Same thing with the willow trees. We can't preserve them based on the fill that needs to be brought in and the condition of the trees themselves. But it's good to kick the tires on these developments, and it's really good to keep getting infill developments. And I think in this particular case, they have a really perfect example across the street, and what a great job Cachet did at the landscaping, all the tree planting, the new sidewalk, the new trails. So that's a tough act to follow, and I hope they will follow it well.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Scott, for those comments. Appreciate that. We do have Ray Councillor here with us tonight. So Councillor Ferragini.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Going through this, I had some concerns. Originally, when we had the public meeting, I brought up the concerns as well. One of them was in regards to the parking. I know we had a discussion about that, and it looks like they've increased it from a 0.25 on the visitor to 0.35. So there was a slight increase in the visitor parking for the area, because we all know what we're dealing with parking situations throughout town. And they have an average of about 2.8 people per household in this subdivision. So that was one of my concerns. We're constantly receiving phone calls from people in this area because of the dramatic increase of people in this area. We're getting a lot more density on this side of town. So when you take a look at the Cachet development that's already in place and the entire west side of Simcoe Road, and we've already been dealing with a big influx where we don't really have the infrastructure in place. Simcoe Road is becoming extremely busy, and the Simcoe Road was just redone too. It's only 2 lanes, right? Canal Road, same thing, has become extremely busy. It's not really for commuter traffic, but it constantly gets used. So we haven't even touched the east side of Simcoe Road yet. That has to be still completely developed. We got two schools for 600 children. There's currently one there now with 140 children, and having my children actually go to that school, and on a daily basis or almost daily basis, we continually get text messages from the school to say, respect the people on the road, don't turn around on Simcoe Road, don't block neighbors' driveways, and this is with a much smaller school. So my point is that the density of this area is becoming quite a bit. So with this proposal, why is it, and I know staff support it because of the intensification and hitting density numbers, but why do we have to go to something that requires condominium fees, where we're tightening things up so much and putting such, making all these changes to the bylaws, to the zoning bylaws, because there's a ton of requests in this report to change setbacks to make this happen, to make it as tight as possible, to put as many units as they can. And I know that the LSRCA says, okay, based on the side that you're using, that's fine. But I understand condo fees if you have amenities and you have infrastructure. We don't have that here. There's no shopping, there's no transit. None of that is down here. And you've got units that are going to be similar to, based on all the designs here, they're going to be similar to what Cachet has. Those homes are selling between $950,000 to $1 million right now, the Cachet development. So you're telling me this isn't helping our affordable issue either, the affordability issue either. $950,000 for a unit like that, plus you're going to pay condo fees on top of this for what? What are we doing? I feel that this plan is very aggressive. And I feel like the developer should be taking a look at what is within their zoning and their bylaws to just create a more suitable housing units for this area. And similar to Councillor Scott's question about the path connecting, what are we doing here for parkland? Is it just because there's open space that's the floodplain? Is that basically what the trade-off is, or is there a cash in lieu? Because why can't, Councillor Stott said that staff looked at it and they can't put it unless there's a bridge. Well, because they made it so dense with the amount of housing units. So, you know, why wasn't the plan looked at to be more community driven and make it attached to some of our parks and some of our areas so people can actually utilize those better? So I have a lot of concerns with this proposal. So thanks for listening to my tangent.
All right, thank you, Councillor Ferragini. Ray, any comments on Councillor Ferragini's comments, please?
Thank you, Councillor Ferragini, for your comments. I'm just going to respond in a few ways. It's a condominium development because the density that they are attempting to achieve, the original proposal came in for 76 units, and through the approval process, they are now down to 71. They were trying to achieve a maximum density, if that's correct. There are, to get back to your point about condo, why a condo? These are going to be private roads. There's going to be a private tot lot. There's a private open space area. And the visitor parking, that's a community asset, and the driveway, snow plowing, snow removal, those are all condominium items. So that won't be dealt with by the municipality. That's going to be dealt with by the condo. The county of Simcoe will be providing waste removal. But it is a condominium, and with your point about affordability and the Cachet development, there is a wide variety of uses in this project. There's the traditional townhouse, row townhouse. There is a back-to-back townhouse, which should be much less than that. They have no large footprint, no rear yard. And then there's rear lane townhouses. So there is a variety, and hopefully through that variety, we can achieve more affordable units. But that affordability is an issue that is difficult to overcome. And maybe with the rise in interest rates, things will come down. But that's why the condo is there. They haven't applied for the condo yet, but that would be coming, a plan of condominium application. But the first step is to get through the plan of subdivision, which then would allow, and the rezoning and the official plan amendment to set up this land as development land. And hopefully, as Councillor Scott had said, we're hoping that this can be a similar type development as the Cache one. There's landscaping plans to replace those trees that are being taken down on Simcoe. There's many reasons we can't retain them because there is fill required on the property, and they're generally not located in the right areas. But anyway, just wanted to address those issues. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ray. Thank you very much for that. I do like this proposal. I think, Ray, you hit it on the head with a few items there. I like the variety of townhomes and the back-to-backs and the lane town. I think we've hit some achievable points here. Councillor Virginie, this has been an area that's been a community plan area 1. So we've understood the growth coming in here for a long time. So I think what we need to do is just, continue working on some of our major roads. We've got, I think as soon as we get the 6th line, the 10th side road, 5th line, 6th, all done to maybe that'll alleviate some of the traffic on Simcoe Road. I'm not sure it's always been a major arterial road. Simcoe's been a collector. So we'll have to, that's where our traffic's going to be. I understand your comments and concerns, but when I look at this one here, I think, boy, this is a good one. It's got some of the amenities like Ray had mentioned, and it's no cost to us because it's all private roads. They'll handle all of the amenities that they need to handle. So, but your points are well taken. We hear it. Councillor Dykey.
We had the same, just for Peter, Councillor Ferragini, Deer Run Estates off of Holland Street has a similar subdivision condominium agreement. Same with, I believe, in Harmony Circle in Ward 7. It covers the snow removal and the maintenance and all that. So the town won't be putting their snow plows in there, and it's all paid by the residential people. I too, as I look at 48 parkland and dedication, I'd like to hear from staff down the road what we are going to get, as a benefit, how much money is going to come forward with, with the cost for parks that we can use in the future, parks to improve the existing parks. But I concur with Councillor Ferragini on this. I have great problems with the density of this. I know this is the new way of going. This is the affordability thing in Ontario, and I see in Cornell and Markham and Richmond Hill, and you look at different subdivisions, how everything is so densely compact. But I think I look at this corner, and this is my opinion, and I have my gut instincts tells me on this, is we're going to have a very congested traffic corner in that area, and I just have concerns on that. They are allowed to do this kind of planning. This is what was legal, and this is what's in Ontario in the Planning Act, and they can do this and move forward. But I don't think that corner was really designed. It's only 2 lanes there, and it's really designed for that amount of traffic, for that short area, that little area. That's a lot of 71 units. Is a lot of units. And I really strongly believe that corner wasn't designed for such high density. I know that this is options, I'm open-minded a little bit to some of these new stacked townhouses and the way things are being built now, but you have to have the infrastructure and the traffic flow, and I don't want to see that area get really bunged up with traffic problems. So those are my comments, and that's my feeling on it.
Yes, thank you for your comments. Councillor Contois. Ray, I'll get back to you in a minute then.
Yeah, listen, everybody's going to sit there and argue about high densities, but that's what we all approved. We're going with higher densities, and that's how we're going to get our numbers without urban sprawl. So you have to have higher densities, and this is what it looks like. And if anything, it's on 2 roads that can handle it. And I think that from what I'm looking at, I'm seeing a whole bunch of visitor parkings that have been added to this project as well. I agree with you guys with the parkland dedication. I don't know what's going on with that. Maybe we can have someone send us a report later on that one. But the driveways are even far enough back from the intersections. So this is for the space. I think it's quite well done. And listen, guys, it can get worse with higher density. So this is just a start.
I'll ask Mr. Kelso to comment.
Thank you for the opportunity. I would like to just address the comment about the transportation. There was a transportation study done, and the developer is dedicating a significant amount of widening for Simcoe Road and for Line 6. So those widenings are being done in contemplation of future traffic loads. So there is widening being requested, and they have agreed to that. In terms of parkland contribution, they will be paying cash in lieu, but they will also be having their own open space area. And the open space area is generally the natural hazard lands that are associated with this project, because there was a realignment of the cut and fill areas to get a development envelope. So the open space area for the residents, they're going to have, as part of the condominium ownership, those people will have the tot lot ownership to that amenity, but they'll also have access to the rear of 2575 Line 6. So there's a significant open space area being provided for the project, and also they will be paying cash in lieu for the development for parkland and trail development elsewhere in the municipality.
Thank you for that clarification, Ray. Any further comments or questions on this one? Your worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And yes, thank you, Mr. Kelso, for commenting. I was going to ask about the lot line that we have now and the future lot line. Just wondering what distance that is and who will be responsible for keeping it neat and tidy, I guess. Simcoe Road has already been redeveloped, and the 6th line, we redeveloped it a few years ago. So I would assume that it would be quite a few years before we would widen this, unless we are looking at widening the intersection. But just the Cache development, what you see from the Simcoe Road, the entrances to the houses are right there. It looks very, very attractive, and I'm just hoping that the same will be on this development, that there won't be weeds growing, and will there be a ditch, or is it storm sewers, and it will be a sidewalk that will be matching the front of the condo buildings that show on the Simcoe Road. So just whether you can answer that now or sometime in the future. Thanks, Deputy Mayor.
Ray, you want to comment on that?
Your worship, your question, they will be hooked up to storm sewers when they become available. In terms of the weeds, and I'm sure that once the land is transferred to municipal ownership, it will be taken care of. But I'm sure they are looking forward to presenting a very nice street aesthetic, and all the front doors on those units facing Simcoe Road, those rear lane townhouses, the front doors actually come on to Simcoe Road, and there's fencing there along the frontage. So they're putting forward a frontage on both Line 6 and Simcoe Road through the rear lane townhouse type development. So it's in their interest to make it as attractive as possible.
Good. So it'll kind of look similar to Cache then, the way they, like his worship said, that looks, Cache looks very nice, and it looks compact. So hopefully we'll have the same kind of setup and layout there. Further comments or questions on this report? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, thank you, carried. Moving on to 4.2. Report of Finance Department 2022 temporary borrowing bylaw. Recommendation that report FIN 2021-20 entitled 2022 temporary borrowing bylaw be received and that the 2022 temporary borrowing bylaw be adopted. Moving a second to put this on the floor, please. Well, Councillor Contois, seconded by Councillor Lamb. Question concerns with this report. It's a standard report we see every year. It's just to have some cash flow to some of our credit, some of our creditors. So standard bylaw that we do every year for the community. Seeing no questions, all in favor? Excellent, thank you. Passed. On to 4.3, report of Finance Department 2022 interim tax levy bylaw. FIN 2021, recommendation that report FIN 2021-21 entitled 2022 interim tax levy bylaw be received and that council adopt the 2022 interim tax levy bylaw. Question, mover and seconder, please put this on the floor. Moved by Councillor Sandu. I was going to say seconded by Rebecca, but no, seconded by Councillor Orr. Rebecca wouldn't work. I almost seen you put your hand up. I thought you were going to help us. Okay, so interim tax bylaw. Any questions or concerns with this one? It's just to get us, your worship.
Yes, thanks, Deputy Mayor. So since the 2021 budget actually decreased a little bit for our taxpayers, well, the first two installments, can we be pretty sure they'll be exactly the same as what the final two installments were for 2021? I wonder whether we're able. This last year, we did get a lot of complaints about the tax installments went up when they got their notification for the first half of the year. And it was because it goes on the previous year budget increase, I understand. So when the 2021 budget didn't increase, should the first two installments be the same as what the installments were for 2021? So I don't know whether Ian can answer that, but I just thought it'd be good to know before the tax bills go out if we can say that, hey, look, the first two installments didn't go up, or is that not the way that things work? So thanks, Deputy Mayor.
Ian?
Thank you, Your Worship. To answer Mayor Keffer's questions, the Municipal Act, the Provincial Municipal Act provides guidance to municipalities in terms of how we calculate our interim property tax bills. And so for the first bill for 2022 will be 50% of the 2021 annualized taxes. So a simple example is if someone paid $4,000 in property taxes for the entire year of 2021, their first bill will be for $2,000 due in two installments for $1,000 each. Now the term annualized comes into play when there's changes in assessment throughout the year, typically new construction. So it's gone from a vacant piece of land to an improved property, typically with a house on it, and the property owner would have received a supplementary tax bill some point in time in 2021 as well. So in that circumstance, they may have only paid, say, $3,000, but if the house had been there for the entire year, then their effective taxes for the full year would have been, I'll go back to the same $4,000 example. So for somebody in new construction, while they maybe only actually paid out $3,000 last year, the effective annual rate of taxation on that improved property is $4,000. So their interim property tax bill would be based upon, again, that same example, $2,000 bill due in two installments of $1,000 each at the end of February and then end of April. So unfortunately, there's not really any discretion for the municipality. It's under the direction of the Municipal Act in terms of how we calculate, issue, and send out those interim property tax bills.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Okay, Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, I understand where the mayor is coming from and such like that, because I hear about it as well. But anybody I've talked to say, do like I do, pay your taxes in 10 monthly installments. You pay from January through till September, and October you finish up what's left, and and you don't feel the pain like that, especially at the end of January or February, when you're still paying off Christmas or whatever, and you're in the drills of winter. We do have good customer service when you go with the 10-month or the monthly basis. And I got to really say that I speak with a lot of intelligent people out there, more intelligent than I am. So, and they don't know about it. When you explain it to them, they say, that's a good idea. So I'm hoping that more people will do that, and then they don't perceive to feel the pain. So we do have an option for people out there that two major tax bills in the spring are a little bit more difficult than 10 pieces of tax bills for the whole year. And I know I preach this every year, but I think we really should be advertising that one harder.
I think, Ian, you have your poster child for your next tax bill going out. Councillor Lamb supporting the 10-month payment plan. And then a big smile, you know, and a big thumbs up. Perfect picture for that tax bill. It'll have all the taxpayers in town happy that they got that tax bill from us. I'm sure.
Sure, but it only works out to like $15 a day when you do it, and a lot of people drink more coffee than that. So I believe that that's the way to go.
I was going to say something about coffee, but I'll leave that. I'll leave that for some other day.
Let me tell you, everybody pays their tax or their hydro bills, their natural gas bills, and all those other utilities monthly. So why not your taxes? Because then you can budget.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm actually supporting your argument. It's a great argument. You're absolutely right. I pay them quarterly. That's all I do. But yeah, okay. So that's the tax levy bill. So we all understand it's just to set our tax rates or our tax bills, the dates for the first two payments, installments. So good questions, good conversation. All in favor? Thank you. Moving on to 4.4, report of Finance Department. Development charge deferral request for 136 Sterling Crescent, FIN 2021-23. Recommendation of the report FIN 2021-23 entitled Development Charge Deferral Request 136 Sterling Crescent dated December 7th, 2021 be received, and the council approve option as outlined in this report. I'll wait and let's have a discussion, and we'll put that on the floor. We'll put the mover and seconder for whatever option we're looking at. So you know that this has an option. We're talking about a DC deferral out on Sterling. We've done a couple. Ian, do you want to just give us a quick, I know you've got in your report, but just your preferred option that you had said in your report. If you just want to give a quick scenario of the options, just a quick rundown, seeing how you're smiling and you're happy tonight. So.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I didn't make identify a preferred option for council. You know, we recognize the issue from both sides of the table here in terms of the proponent wanting to put their development forward and seeking some assistance from council and in seeing that through and having that materialize. But then when I put on my treasurer's hat and stop thinking about the economic development and the other potential benefits of perhaps bringing that development to fruition sooner than later, I think about the monies that the town has put out in enabling that development to take place in terms of servicing the lands and all of the growth related projects we've taken outside of infrastructure, even including our library and leisure center. We've built a tremendous amount of growth related projects over the last decade or perhaps longer that are there to service the future growth, not just the non-residential growth, but our future population. Our library is currently built to handle our 2031 population. So we built it and now we're hoping they'll come. And it looks like they are coming. But when we look at the cash flow, I sort of, in some ways, I think about this perhaps in a bit of a retail perspective, that the town has built a commodity, a product that is servicing capacity. So now we're selling it, and the developers are our customers. So, we've paid for it. And in a typical retail environment, you'd expect your customers to pay their bill when they come to buy their product. But I recognize that we don't necessarily have to do that either, because there may be benefits to not doing that at the first opportunity where we can. So it's striking that balance. And what there are already deferrals in place for this property in terms of when it was subdivided. The development charges for hard services, in accordance with the town's bylaws, should have been paid at that point in time. They've already been deferred to point in time. when there's actual building permits pulled for these individual properties. So this development is already enjoying a deferral of development charges. So selfishly, I'd like to see the money come back in the door, but I recognize all of the issues, and that's why I did not make a specific recommendation. But certainly, I'm here to answer any other questions that council may have.
Okay, thank you, Ian. I knew I made a mistake asking you for, you want the money right away. I should have known that. I don't blame you. You had to put your treasurer's hat on, that's for sure. That's what we have here for. All right, I open it up for questions or comments. I'm going to support a deferral. I would like to see the deferral to a maximum time frame of December 31st, 2025. I supported deferrals in the past on some properties, and it was always with their understanding that we were going to have that money by the time we had to make our payment back in 2025. So I noticed when reading the report that we have one out there that is that could go on for a while, and that's not what I want. I want the bill to go forward, but I also want an end date on the deferrals. I like giving an opportunity to defer when it doesn't really impact us at that point. But it will impact us after 2025 for sure. So I'm not sure what option that is, but I like, sorry, I'm going to leave it up to everybody else, but I do like option 2, but I certainly want to make sure that we have an end date of 2025, December 31st, 2025. So we might want to change that option and make sure that that's the end date. But questions or comments from anybody on this? So does somebody want to throw an option on the floor? Can I throw the option on the floor, Rebecca, and as a chair?
Certainly. I believe you're probably going to then modify one of the options.
Yeah, I was going to modify option 2 to go with the 30-30-40, but no later than 2025, December 31st, 2025, to have all the DCs paid. If the building permits are pulled, I want the DCs paid by 2025, December 31st. Does that make sense, Ian?
Yes, I do understand your initiative here. So, sort of at the sooner of, or with that sunset, that deadline. So, if, as you said, if the dates lag, then the December 31st deadline would rule of 2025.
Mm-hmm. Comments or questions from anybody else on this to see? Do they have an idea, Your Worship?
I wonder whether we could achieve the same thing by saying that we'd withdraw this deferral if they don't have their building permit by, and I'd look to staff, maybe the end of 2022. I'm not sure how far along they are as far as getting their development agreements in place, but I don't want this to drag on and be there and then drag their feet and not develop until 2024 before we have a hotel there. So I'm not sure whether our CAO could comment or whether Ian could comment about saying that this deferral, what should be the best way to as the deputy mayor says, that it has to be all paid up by the end of 2025, was it, deputy mayor? Or that we put in place that this agreement is no longer available if they don't have their building permit by the end of 2020. So somebody could answer that.
You got Jeff, or Jeff jump in and.
Sure. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. It's my understanding the application, the site plan application has progressed to the point that we would certainly be ready to issue building permits by the end of 2022. So I think that's a reasonable deadline to state that development needs to commence. I would probably still keep both parameters in there. So we want it to start by a certain time, and we want full payment by a certain time. If the developer or the hotel operator runs into an issue that council deems reasonable, they can always come back to you and seek some relief there. But I think it's reasonable to have both of those dates included in any kind of deferral that you may want to consider.
So Rebecca, I think we have a good understanding here. If we can talk about option 2 and making it that you have to have your building permits out by the end of 2022, and we only defer to the end of 2025. That's a maximum deferral time, right?
Yeah, that's certainly understandable. Council can amend this resolution if you want, but I believe staff understand your direction, and when I write the agreement, I'll make sure those points are included.
Excellent. So is everybody good with that? Councillor Lamb?
I'll move it for you, as long as that's read so that end of 2022, the first 30 points comes in 23, the second 30 points come in 24, and the 40 points come in 25. And then when all our stuff is due, we can clear it off.
That's
I would
correct.
move that.
Perfect. Moved by Councillor Lamb, seconded by Councillor Sandu. Excellent. Any further comments or questions? We have that option on the floor. Staff, oh, Ian's got his hand up. Sorry, Ian.
Sorry, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a clarification to Councillor Lamb. So under this modified option 2, there are no development charges payable upon building permit application. The first payment is based upon occupancy. So there would not be a payment coming in at the end of 2022. The first payment would come in at occupancy, second payment a year hence, third payment a year after that, unless December 31st, 2025 has met us first. So there's no payment upon building permit. I just want to make sure that the council is clear on that.
Yes.
Well, sorry, the way I read it is, sorry, your Deputy Worship, 30% at initial occupancy, which we would expect to be in 23. So it could be written that way. And then 30 1 year after, and then 40 2 years after, which is 2025. I don't know how you want, but I understand where you come from, Ian. I hope you understand where we're all coming from. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Rebecca and Ian know they have it, and they know what our wishes and demands are. And we've got a condition for opening and a condition for closing, and we're good with that. So if you're good with that, Councillor Lamb, still, you're still moving it. Good. And Councillor Sandy, you're still seconding. Very good. Any further comments or questions? I see your hand went up, Ron. Any comments?
Yeah, I agree with where you're going. The only thing I wondered is when you do the potential building and occupancy in your mind, and when it was, if the third part of that, the 40%, if it was to read the third part, the remainder to be paid no later than 2025, because if we leave that in there, that could well be passed, or you could either that or the, like you say, it's the 40% has to be paid by 2025. Rebecca will wordsmith it, I'm sure.
Rebecca?
Just to clarify, I think is essentially this deferral agreement's on the table with a time limit. If they do not obtain a building permit prior to the end of 2022, the deferral is off the table, so that the agreement will be terminated. The agreement will be written, that's one component of it, will be written with the 40% as initial occupancy is years from occupancy, albeit that all of the term will be, it is paid by the end of 2025. So if that is, takes them a long time to build, so they actually get a permit, but it takes them years, something happens to their build, they're still going to have to pay 100% of it by 2025. So whichever payment kind of comes first, and the language will be written that way, so that the town will receive all its payments by 2025, and that the deferral agreement will terminate if they don't obtain a building permit, assuming that means includes a conditional building permit by the end of 2022.
So I like the compromise because we're going to push them to get that building permits going, and we're going to push them to keep building. So the sooner they get to occupancy, the sooner they start generating revenue to pay those DCs. All right. Further comments or questions on it? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. We'll rise and report. Recommendation that the committee of whole adjourn at 9:13. Moved by Councillor Dykey, seconded by Councillor Scott. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. I turn it back to your worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So move on to item 15, committee minutes and recommendations. I'll reconvene the regular meeting. So recommendation that the minutes of the November 17th, 2021 Healthy Communities Advisory Committee meeting be received. Mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Contois, Deputy Mayor Leduc. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. 15.2 Heritage Committee Minutes. Recommendation that the minutes of the November 18th, 2021 Heritage Committee meeting be received. Move in a seconder for this. Councillor Orr, Councillor Contois, any comments or questions? Councillor Contois?
I was just hoping maybe Councillor Orr can give me a little information on the Hammer Harris house, the 8th line. Just a little background on it.
Councillor Orr?
Yeah, the committee had a member of the community that knows the heritage of the house had requested that it be looked at for designation, and actually a family member of the owners prior to now, it's been sold, of course, a few years ago, in support. So it's just a case of looking at it and assessing whether it has to be assessed and looked at, Councillor Comtois, as to there is some heritage as to the composition of the house, and it just something has to be assessed yet, and we have to get permission to assess it.
Thanks, Ron. And just one added question, like, how do you determine which houses, so in other words, this was done by a request, and a request came forward and they wanted to designate this house. So then you look at that request. Is that how this is done?
Well,
that's kind of what I'm reading.
You have to, you have to have the permission, of course, from the owners to assess the house and assess as to what criteria is in this house, how unique is the house. Sometimes it was brought forth because it is a very unique, apparently, build, and so the family member would like to see the house stay. It's still on agricultural land at this point, but of course, an investor owns it at this point.
But the family member sold the house.
The family, it's on a farm, so the family has sold the land, and the family member would like to see the house retained in the future.
Okay, and so I have one more question. And here nor there, do you not have a list that you guys go off of, that you look at certain houses and then you go to inspect these houses? Houses that you think are of value. So eventually your working group would evaluate those homes and then determine whether or not it has merit or not. Do you not have that type of list you work from, or is this just?
Well, we have the listed list, of course, of homes. Actually, the committee has been fairly busy all along with dealing with the houses that come up for demolition, and working and assessing those. So, yes, there's probably houses out there that need to be looked at and eventually designated. You're right, Councillor Comtois, but at this point, they're not really pursuing going through the list again and looking at ones that to look at for designation. Is that something you'd like to see done?
Thank you, Councillor. Well, I thought it was already part of the process. I thought you were, because if you remember a while back, you guys brought a great big list of houses that were going to be on the list, or were on the list, but not every house had been checked for its value, or whether or not it was even, fell into a criteria that met it, because some of the houses were relatively new houses that were taken off the list. So I thought that you guys would be evaluating that list, making a good list, and looking at the other ones and saying, okay, well, when these ones come up, we don't even have to question it. that type of thing going on. That's what I thought yous were doing, so.
I wonder whether I could ask our CEO just to comment that my understanding, we had a request to designate a house. Now, this was a listed house. So it's almost, the Heritage Committee almost has to look into once we get a request, then the Heritage Committee would look pretty bad if they didn't look into that further. So when we did get the request for this house on the 8th line, that's what we're pursuing, and that's the wording put forward in this recommendation. So I don't know, Jeff, if you can comment about, so we have to remember, once a house is designated, then there is the possibility that they get a 50% reduction in their property taxes. And so that we have to be quite discerning as far as which houses we do designate. So Jeff, do you want to comment just about the process as far as looking into a particular property to designate?
Sure, thank you. So Councillor Cantwell referred to the list of properties on Council's Heritage Registry that kind of met a first set of criteria with respect to their significance. So those are the properties, you'll recall that occasionally we'll get a notice of intent to demolish. So that's an extra status that a typical building does not have. Once it's listed on the registry, then we cannot issue a demolition permit until that notice is provided. Council considers it and determines whether or not to allow demolition to occur or proceed with a designation process. So that's that first level of protection. A designated property for full protection that Mayor Keffer just referred to is a higher level of protection. And to get there, the committee and council have endorsed a set of criteria that are applied to the home or the property or the building when it's evaluated. So that speaks to the architectural quality, who may have owned it currently or in the past, what kind of value it holds within the community's eye. So if it scores high enough in those criteria, then, or actually regardless of what the score is, the committee makes a recommendation to council. If it has scored high enough to warrant designation, then council has that choice. And if it is designated, as the mayor indicated, there are certain benefits that the landowner then can enjoy. So he's quite right in pointing out that a level of scrutiny is required, and that's the evaluation process that the committee goes through and ultimately makes a recommendation to council.
Is that all right, Councillor Cantwell? And it is still council that makes the decision. It's just the Heritage Committee will make a recommendation to council. And that's the final decision is council's. Councillor Cantwell?
Yeah, no, thank you. Listen, I was just trying to figure out exactly what was going on. I thought the process was actually already implemented. So if we're not doing it, maybe it's something to consider for your Heritage Committee and other entities. So I'm just pointing it out.
Yeah.
So I'm not against this or for it. It is, I'll be looking forward to when it comes forward.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cantwell. Good point. And yeah, you know, there's certainly houses out there worthy of designation. And yeah, the Duncan Page house that we went through that process and it qualified. So that, yeah, we'll take it under advisement, Councillor Orr, and yeah, if the committee wants to bring forward other designation requests, we can look into that as the committee. Okay, any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? And it is carried. So item 15.3 is the Anti-Racism Advisory Committee minutes, November 25th, 2021. And the recommendation is that the minutes of the November 25th, 2021 Anti-Racism Advisory Committee meeting be received. Mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Lamb, Deputy Mayor Leduc, comments or questions? It was a good first committee meeting that, yes, the vice chair handled the committee quite well for his first meeting. And there will be another meeting coming up tomorrow night. So we wanted to have another meeting in December so that it'll carry on with the business of the Anti-Racism Advisory Committee tomorrow. Seeing no further questions, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. 15.4 Downtown Revitalization Committee minutes. Recommendation that the minutes of the December 1st, 2021 Downtown Revitalization Committee meeting be received. Mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Dykey, Councillor Contois, comments? I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And it is carried. Recommendation that the council request staff report on a permanent patio program and the feasibility of piloting weekend road closures in summer 2022 for on-street restaurant service. Mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Dykey, Councillor Contois, comments or questions? Seeing, oh, Councillor Orr?
Yeah, sorry, Your Worship. No, just a comment. Hopefully we're doing, or there was a look at how successful some of the patios were. I agree. I think it's been a good program, and but I'm wondering if some of them didn't seem to be used that much, and that certain parts of the road may be blocked off. Hopefully that's going to take into, and I know it's the staff report come forward, and hopefully that comes out in the staff report.
Yes, Michael Kemp is doing a survey with the owners that had the patios. I guess it was maybe requested us, maybe a survey of those businesses that didn't partake of it too. I'm not sure, but that was discussed anyways at the meeting. Councillor Contois?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Yeah, it was part of the discussion, and most of the restaurants are in favor of the patio program, and even those that aren't restaurants are in favor of it because it draws people to the downtown. So, you know, but the other aspect of it was the lane and road closures. We might have opportunities down the road to close a section of Jury and create a sitting area for people downtown. And same with weekend closures. We might be able to just close between the village and the funeral home and go in the opposite direction, just close it off until John Street, creating opportunities for little street events and things like that. That's kind of where we're going with it, and the businesses were asking for that to be part of the repertoire to draw people downtown. You know, if you think about it, that little stretch between Barry and John, Holland and John on Barry, you can get a lot of activities in that little stretch and a lot of stuff happening. And really, what does it interfere with? Not much. You still have your flow going down the main street. You still have your flow going down John Street and all the outlets to get to where you need to go. So it really wouldn't hurt or disrupt the area all that much in my view. But anyways, that's kind of where what we're thinking and where we're going.
Thank you, Councillor Contois. Oops. So with that, any other questions or comments? Call for the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. The next recommendation is that upon approval of the town's 2020 budget, council directs staff to investigate and report back to the Downtown Revitalization Committee on a municipal mural program in consultation with relevant staff, educational institutions, local businesses, as well as the Downtown Revitalization Committee to include application guidelines, evaluation criteria, draft agreement recommendations, and potential coordination with any future community improvement plans. Mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Scott, Councillor Lamb, comments or questions? Councillor Scott?
I just have to give a shout out to Holy Trinity. They kind of came out of the blue to say they wanted to help restore murals downtown. And here we are creating a mural policy, having approved $10,000 in our budget and I think at least one CIP grant. So it's really nice when things come together, and Tanis McCarthy, the teacher, really deserves a lot of credit for sort of kicking this off. It was an issue that was dangling, and thanks to her and her students, we're going to be able to move this ahead, I think. So it's really a nice news story.
Councillor Dickey?
Just to Jonathan, great job. I just wanted to mention there's opportunity as well, even though $10,000 is going to Kitty and their students going to help, but there's still an opportunity there to get sponsors involved. Once you start buying that paint and start fixing up different areas of the buildings that you have to paint onto, you'll be surprised how expensive the materials are and the paint. So just passing the word on to you is if you can get sponsors as well. There's opportunity to look at that and get more for your buck. That's my only comment, because it's everything today, everything's so expensive, and we all want to. I know Holy Trinity will do a great job, amazing job. I know they will do, but it would be nice to get the most bang out of the buck for those projects.
Councillor Contois?
No, when this first came forward, I thought it was a great idea. But I think we were bantering around different materials as well. So it could be a vinyl actually on the side of the building versus paint. And Holy Trinity will design and do all the things all the artwork necessary for the design that goes on that wall. So it's still a collaboration, but it's not necessarily going to be paint. It could be a vinyl. So I'm just making that point clear for everybody.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Contois. Any other questions or comments? Good initiative. With that, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Any opposed? And that is carried. So there's no new business. We move on to bylaws. Bylaw 2021-77, a bylaw to amend bylaw 2018-26, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a private parking enforcement agreement with private parking control and traffic services, and to appoint municipal enforcement officers for the provision of parking control and traffic services on certain private properties. So the recommendation is that bylaw 2021-77 be enacted. Mover and a seconder for this. It's Deputy Mayor Leduc, a seconder. Councillor Contois, any comments? Call for the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. So announcements. We do have a slide with some announcements on. I think Councillor Ferragini, we better congratulate you and Councillor Fowler on the great fundraising that you did for Movember for men's health. And oh yeah. Yeah, clean shaven. Very good.
My wife's happy it's gone.
Yeah, but no, a great initiative, and it was great. Great that Innisfil and Bradford West Gwillimbury had a friendly competition. So, any other announcements that Councillor Scott?
I just thought everyone would like to know that the food bank's annual Christmas gift card and dinner giveaway is this Saturday at Holy Martyrs. I believe starting up at 11 a.m. until about 4 p.m. in the afternoon. So everyone's welcome to come by and help hand them out and participate that way. And their year-end fundraising drives are off to a very strong start, and they will be able to cover the entire cost of these Christmas gift certificates and food hampers, which is about $35,000. So it's always a big lift this time of year, and the community is stepping up as they did last year as well.
Thank you, Councillor Scott, for the update on the food bank. That an awful lot of work goes into that food hamper program. So thanks to you and all the executive of the food bank that does that work. So we did have a slide up. The town's master transportation study is kicking off on Thursday, I guess. That so sign up for a time slot to attend the first virtual public information center. Toys for tickets. There's some toys under the Christmas tree at Unit 7, 100 Dissette Street. And that's for overnight on-street winter parking ban, so that you can pay it by donating new toys. And then Family First Night, December 31st, from 5:30 to 9. So there are things planned. Leisure skating between 5:30 and 8:30. And starting at 8 o'clock, outdoor busker shows, followed by a mini fireworks display. So it's good to have a smaller celebration for Family First Night, but because of COVID restrictions, that we are still, there will be indoor skating for, I guess, first come, first serve, or however that number of people that the arena can handle. Any further announcements? Seeing none, move on to, are there any notices of motions? Seeing none, confirm proceedings, recommendation that bylaw 2021-78, a bylaw to confirm proceedings of the council meeting dated December the 7th, 2021 be enacted. Mover and a seconder for this? Councillor Lamb, Councillor Dykey. All in favor? And it is carried. Maybe another announcement that I forgot was the Public Information Center for the affordable housing development on corner of Simcoe Road in Marshview. And just anybody interested that can go on. I guess it's on the county's website. Councillor Scott, you've been involved with that, but
yes, it is. I don't have the exact link, but it's I think if you Google Bradford Community Housing, Simcoe County Housing Corporation, it should come up. But it was a great, two great presentations on Monday night.
Councillor Dykey.
A quick question. Did the county made those flyers that went out in the mail? I just wanted to, today was the first time someone brought one to my shop, and I was very impressed how well it was put together. And it had connections to where you can email everybody and get information on that. Just want to know who spearheaded that. That's an excellent brochure.
Okay, we'll have to look into that, Councillor Dykey. I'm not sure. Rebecca's nodding her head. Yes, it was the county.
It was the county. Yes, their project team is very on the ball and very progressive and proactive in trying to get feedback on this important project.
By it going out door to door, it really woke up a lot of interested parties. Because that flyer, like, I was really surprised. I looked at it today. I analyzed it. I actually have it on my Facebook, Ward 7 Facebook page, and I was very impressed how well they did. If anything, they did a great job on that. I must say that.
Okay, we'll move on then to adjournment. Recommendation that the meeting is hereby adjourned at 9:38 p.m. Mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Contois, Councillor Scott, all in favor?